you doing, wrestling fans? And welcome to another edition of John Arezzi's Pro Wrestling Spotlight podcast. We are the only wrestling podcast that brings you back 30 years with vintage audio featuring some of the biggest names of that time. This show is no exception. The Pro Wrestling Spotlight covered all the news and breaking developments that happened in real time. And now we get to relive those moments in that history right here on this podcast. Today, we will review the show, which aired on 1240 AM WGBB in West Babylon, New York, on September the 18th, 1994. David from the Power Twins will join us. He comes in and decides to stay for the entire show. So we'll cover all of that. We also have Dave Meltzer via the telephone. But for me, it was a show which planted the seeds for my decision to end the program because I just had enough, and you'll hear all about it. Before we do, I want you to go to patreon.com/John Arezzi to join the community and to be able to have access to 5 years of programs from 1989 through the present time and more every Sunday. And you get the unedited archives of the Pro Wrestling Spotlight for just $5. There's other perks as well. We do Zoom calls. We also give you early access to this podcast, the video podcast, and of course, all of those complete shows. There are other levels that begin at $10 after the $5 level. You can go up to $25 or $50 or $100 a month. And depends on how deep you want to get into the archives and what other perks you want. So go to patreon.com/John Arezzi, and there'll be more information for you there. And without further ado, let's bring on our producer, our creative director, Marsh. Hey-oh. Oh. My cousin used to say that all the time. My cousin Jimmy.
Really?
Hey-oh, that's what he used to do all the time.
I don't know where it came from.
It sounds like a Ed McMahon thing from The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson, because that's how when Johnny Carson, when Ed was the announcer, and he'd always say, hey-oh.
That's got to be it. It's got to be it, because I've also been getting way into old Saturday Night Live, and the Johnny Carson sketch with Dana Carvey and Phil Hartman are faves. So it's got to.
Have you ever watched the Gary Shandling show?
Oh yeah, man. I still
that was like Hank. Hey now.
Yeah, I don't know why, but one of my favorite gags in it, and I remember because I haven't seen it since I was a kid, but I remember that he had a phone call. He was outside of a pool, and they're all like, "Mr. Shandling, you have like a phone call," and he goes, "Tell him I'll talk later." He's like, "It's a woman," and he jumps up and runs across the pool on top of it.
That was such a great show. Larry,
and
I guess this is going to be a great show today. At least I hope. It was an interesting one. I actually freaked out when I uploaded it. I was actually freaking out. I was like, "This is why I was fucking leaving."
It was tough. Like, I'm listening to it at a certain point. I'm all like, "What happened?" Another point, even one of the Power Twins says, "John, what did you do to your audience?" Like, I wasn't even done yet. And I'd already messaged you like, "John, this was tough to get through. Like, they're mean to you."
They are. And even Richard Williams was like, "This was a hard episode to listen to." He wrote up on our Patreon. And it was for me. And, I was trying to figure out what in the hell happened. I've been back on the air after all these months. And I don't know if it was just a lot of the kids who listened to the WBAI Adelphi University radio show, where one of our Whack Packers, Ski, gave out the information, and that's where these crank calls were coming from. I don't know. All I know is that listening back 30 years, 29 years later, I was like, this is certainly the beginning of the end for me, especially with everything else that we started talking about that we'll get into, from the convention to these crank callers, and then sitting with David from the Power Twins in front of me, knowing that I didn't want him to be there, but he wouldn't fucking leave.
It was amazing. Like, I don't have the moment he walks in. I don't believe I clipped that. I clipped him talking in a minute. But you're just all of a sudden like, "Oh, there's a surprise guest. It's David from the Power Twins. What are you doing here?"
Yeah. Right.
And then, yeah, you gave him a few minutes and you're like, all right, well, we're going to go on with the show. It's nice having you. He goes, no, I'm staying. And you're like, oh. It was weird. Like,
and he did, and he stayed.
Did he just, like, I know he liked to drop in on you whenever they wanted, but, like, you had been off air for a long time. You only been back for a couple of weeks. How did he know exactly when and where you were?
Well, he knew I was back on the air, I guess. I mean, that was kind of well known. And I don't know if he asked me to plug something. I don't know. Because I did keep in touch with people back then, even though I was off the air. So I don't know how it happened.
He just sat there quietly that long?
Yeah, but this was definitely an odd one. It was an odd one.
It was crazy. There was so much going on in the world. But let's just kind of start and let the show tell its own story, I feel like.
Okay.
Because it will. It's going to play out. You did have your opening where you talk about how War Games is tonight. You mentioned that Herb Abrams is back presenting Blackjack Brawl, and you're trying to get Herb on the phone, but you're not able to do it.
Yeah.
You tried to get Jay on. You tried to get Jim Ross on. But he's back with the Atlanta Falcons, and so he told you he'd come back when Atlanta's not playing at home. He would do an interview. So I don't know if that ever comes about, but
no,
you had been talking to him, which is kind of nice.
Once again, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Pro Wrestling Spotlight Capsule. Of course, all eyes tonight will be in Virginia because this evening, World Championship Wrestling presents Fall Brawl. That's the War Games in Roanoke. The pay-per-view show will be headlined by a triangle match involving Sting, Vader, and the Guardian Angel. Also, Cactus Jack will have his swan song performance with the company while in the ring with Kevin Sullivan. And in the match beyond, caged in 2 rings, will be the foursome teams of the Rhodes. That's Dusty and Dustin with the Nasty Boys. And on Team 2, it's Terry Funk, Bunkhouse Buck, Arn Anderson, and their manager, Colonel Parker. Now, besides tonight's live event, Nashville, Tennessee appears to be the chosen site of WCW's final pay show of 1994, Starrcade. Originally penciled in for San Antonio, Texas, the promotion changed plans after the announcement of the World Wrestling Federation booking their Thanksgiving Eve Survivor Series annual pay show in that city. December's Starrcade is the promotion's oldest continuous pay show, dating back to November 1983 when emanating from Charlotte, North Carolina. Several closed-circuit sites will complete sellouts to witness Ric Flair defeat Harley Race for the NWA title on that historic date. While WCW has had its crew just return from touring Europe, after yesterday's show in Birmingham, England, the WWF will also be touching back down this week on U.S. soil after their successful European tour. The next set of television tapings for the Fed will take place next week, beginning on Monday night, September 26th in Utica, New York, which will also feature a live Monday Night Raw, Tuesday in Poughkeepsie, and on Wednesday, September 28th in White Plains. Now, it's expected that on this set of tapes, that midget ring veteran Little Louie will begin a feud with Dink. After 32 years of headlining shows for promoters worldwide, Ivan Koloff billed much of that time as the Russian Bear announced his retirement this past week. Last night's match in North Carolina against Wahoo McDaniel was to be Koloff's final trip to the Squared Circle as a participant. A holder of many regional titles throughout his career, illustrious at that. Of course, Ivan is best remembered for his shocking pinfall victory on January the 18th, 1971, in Madison Square Garden over Bruno Sammartino to gain the WWF heavyweight crown, in which he held for 3 weeks before losing to Pedro Morales. Extreme Championship Wrestling, well, they'll be expanding their proverbial promotional wing south this coming weekend into Florida. On Friday night, September 23rd, they will be running in Tampa. And on Saturday, a show is booked in Ocala. The Ocala show will be honoring past wrestling greats Dory Funk Sr. and Duke Kiyomoka, the father of Pat Tanaka. Set your VCRs this Friday evening for 10 p.m. to Sports Channel. If you can't watch the program's 3 hours of live Universal Wrestling Federation action, promoter Herb Abrams presents Blackjack Brawl from Las Vegas, Nevada at the MGM Grand. Among the advertised matches for the show on Vegas Strip are in what is being billed as a UWF title match. Dr. Death Steve Williams goes up against Sid Vicious. In a ladies' match, the Magnificent Mimi and Kenny Devine will go at it, and Cowboy Bob Orton will slug it out with Ludwig Borger, who is being billed as the Finland Hellraiser. 12 matches in all are advertised for the September 23rd show. Actor Bruce Willis begins filming Die Hard 3 this week in Manhattan. The familiar face of former WWF grappler Damian Demento may come to mind to onlookers of the set. That's because Demento, also known as Mondo Clean, has had a part in the flick, and it'll be starting, as we said, this week. Finally, this week in wrestling history, it was 23 years ago on September 24th, 1971 in Los Angeles Olympic Auditorium that Mil Mascaras won the Americas title for a third time in upending the Golden Greek John Tolis. Also, a belated happy birthday to manager extraordinaire James E. Cornette. Yesterday was the Louisville Sluggers' big day. For the Pro Wrestling Spotlight, I'm Don Label reporting. Capsule time, 1:11.
There's a lot in there, you know.
So much going on. War Games, Cactus Jack's last match in WCW against Kevin Sullivan. Ivan Koloff retired. ECW's going to Florida. Herb Abrams is back. Bruce Willis is filming a movie. It's like at everything.
Yeah, there was certainly a lot of activity, and the biggest surprise was the reemergence of Herb Abrams, I felt.
It's
that
like
was
out of
crazy.
nowhere.
Out of nowhere.
How much time did he have between popping up and having the show? Was it one of those things like the show's in a month, or like?
I think I would have talked about it if I kind of knew what was going on, and all of a sudden he probably reached out, and that was that. I mean, it was pretty quick, and the attendance obviously was in, you know, in the dozens, or if it wasn't, there was, that place was empty.
But that could be their own fault, sort of like what we see kind of nowadays with some. It was a 17,000 seat arena, and they'd only sold like 2,000 seats. So 2,000 is not a small number, but in a 17,000 seat arena.
Well, that was also fictitious.
Oh, that turned out not to be true?
That was not true.
I got worked.
It was worked. We all got worked because there had to be, you know, several hundred in there, but there was not 2,000 people in that place.
Really? Wow.
And we'll go over it. We'll go over it as the show progresses, because, you know, we'll talk about, you know, more about we'll talk about it, but that was a big surprise, and it was loaded. It was a loaded show.
Yeah. And for the record, just for clarity, the reason you know there was only a few dozen is because you were there. You made it to the show.
Yeah, that's the spoiler. Right. And I talked about it.
Well, you didn't talk about if you did go or not. But
well, at this point, I didn't know if I was going to go. But the way this show unfolded, I kind of made the decision during the show that fuck this, I'll go to fucking Vegas.
Was Vegas on the same day you would have been recording otherwise?
Yeah, it was the weekend.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So
Then we'll get to it.
Yeah.
We'll get some more details as we go then. I loved that Donnie called Cornette the Louisville Slugger. Because he just had a birthday, which leads us into the next clip where you talk about Cornette's birthday and what an interesting birthday it was.
Yeah, it was a little interesting.
And followed up with a little bit of Herb Abrams talk, which you talk a little bit more about your relationship with Herb, which is kind of interesting.
You got it.
Yeah, Donnie and Cornette did celebrate a birthday, and I tried to call him up earlier this morning, and I did get that answering machine. And for those of you out there who, a lot of you probably don't know, but Jim was turned himself into the law last week, had a little bit of a run-in with a former employee by the name of Casey O'Connor. Cornette took a baseball bat to his car. What had happened, Don, I'm sure you've heard the story by now, that Cornette was claiming that O'Connor, who he had fired from Smoky Mountain Wrestling, had a video camera of his, and O'Connor said that Cornette owed him like $300 in back office expenses. Cornette went to collect the camera. O'Connor wouldn't deliver, so Jim took a baseball bat to the car. And he turned himself in the following morning, which was last Monday, to the police, and was released on $2,000 bond. An interesting scenario. Cornette kind of going over the edge a little bit in the Smoky Mountain territories, and his answering machine today, he answered it as, "Hello, I'm Richard Kimball," and it was the one-armed man. It wasn't me who did that. He was.
I had heard that, John, a couple days ago. I had called his line. As I said earlier, he may be up here next week for the Utica television tapings, and got that answering machine in the message, which whether it's a serious matter, but couldn't help but to snicker a little bit listening to that.
Yeah, Jim is a pretty volatile personality, but he's one of the most brilliant minds in the business, and a lot of people say he is the best wrestling manager in pro wrestling. And I got a lot of respect for Jim, and he's going through some hard times there in the territory. It's very, very difficult to keep a territory up and going. But Cornette is scheduled to be up here with a lot of the crew from Smoky Mountain Wrestling in November. I believe the weekend is the 17th of November up in New Jersey. Promoter Dennis Carluzzo and Tommy Fierro will be holding a live card and autograph session in the day. And from what I understand, there will be Cornette appearing, Tammy Fitch, Chris Candido, the Gangsters, Jerry Lawler, and they'll also, I believe, have that NWA title tournament that night in New Jersey. And we'll have details here on the program upcoming in the next few weeks. But Don, getting to Herb Abrams for a second. Herbie is back.
It's incredible. I knew of the show, but not until you brought it to my attention that I know that it's going to be live this coming weekend.
Well, he
had
told me that he calls me sporadically, calls me about once a week just to shoot the breeze with me, and he had told me a few months ago that this thing was going to be on Sports Channel, and I really didn't think it was going to happen, and finally the confirmation was made, and this show will be seen live this coming Friday. Now, I understand Herb does have another show scheduled for November, sometime in November, the Blackjack Brawl 2, and I think he's shooting for a February pay-per-view. So I guess his angles and his storylines will be developed on live television, and it'll be interesting to see how it all transpires.
And I'll tell you, looking at the advertisement that he's had, it looks very professional. Tickets are going for $12, $18, and $30 there. I'm sure there'll be a lot of comps for the gamblers and whatnot. But just looking down at the lineup, whether who shows and for whatever reasons, travel or other bookings, whatever. But I see there's, as we said, Steve Williams and Vicious. I think that sounds pretty interesting, especially
if it's a shoot.
Williams, just looking at him, he's a scary individual. But I see some of the other people now. Duggan is listed on there, Hercules. All the Ortons are going to be there. Barry O is on the show. Bob Orton's on the show. Bob Orton Sr. lives in Vegas, so I'm sure he'll be there. Spivey.
Santana against Spivey, yeah.
And also Warlord is on the card. Brian Blair, Brunzell. So it's got quite a few names there, and I think it makes it interesting. Again, more of a choice for people to watch, and it could be at the right time.
Yeah, one match which has caught my eye, and it's going to be a match that I'm sure he's going to enjoy participating in. It's billed as a lumberjack match. For what reason, I don't know. There's really no storyline around it, but whatever. Jimmy Superfly Snuka will be taking on Cactus Jack, and that will be on this show. And Cactus has indicated to me and talked to me about this match, and he's very thrilled to be booked against Superfly, because he said Jimmy Snuka was the one of the inspirations, if not the key inspiration that got him into the business. And he's very, very pleased to be wrestling Jimmy Snuka. And matter of fact, in Cactus's old room out in the house that his parents own in Setauket, Long Island here, there's still a poster in the room of Jimmy Superfly Snuka. And Cactus is certainly looking forward to that match. And Cactus tonight, as you said, the swan song with WCW.
John, mentioning that with Cactus, somewhat idolizing Jimmy Snuka reminds me of looking at a video of him jumping off the roof of his garage and sticking his hands up in the air, similar to what Snuka does. Certainly going to be unpredictable, that match.
That's a priceless piece of video, Cactus Jack jumping off the roof of his house.
Twice!
Yeah. Unbelievable. He was practicing in his younger days, and he certainly has become a cult figure in professional wrestling that fans certainly love to watch.
Yeah, that match, a lumberjack match, and they wound up brawling all over that arena. So a lumberjack match is supposed to keep the guys in the ring and throw them back in.
Yeah.
But they went up into the empty arena, and they were just going wild. It was crazy.
That's awesome. That's funny. Yeah.
I
like how you mentioned
it's
too.
going to be cool because Cactus is actually on the next show that we do here. So that one is dated October 2nd of 94. Because next week would have been the 17th. Next week would have been the 24th of September, and there is no show. So that means I was still in Vegas or just coming back from Vegas. But yeah, Cactus comes on the next week. So we'll find out more about that lumberjack match.
Yeah. That's the first time they fought. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. That's incredible. I don't know if they ever got a chance to do it again. If I'm honest, did they?
I don't remember them doing it again.
Yeah. Man, that's cool. It'll be nice to hear Cactus just afterwards talk about it, because he can reminisce about it all he wants now, but in the moment, that's the cool stuff.
That's priceless stuff.
Yeah. I love how many times you've brought up this video, this priceless video, you called it, of him as a kid jumping off the roof.
Yeah, it's amazing. That whole story. Right. I mean, and I'm so happy that I still have it. It has been, it's on VHS cassette that he made for me. It's an entire thing. So, it was first time I saw it, I was blown away, and it was just the beginning of this incredible journey of his life.
How did you feel when you first saw it actually show up on WWF TV?
When I saw the video?
Yeah, when you saw it pop up.
I thought it was very cool. I thought it was cool because they didn't even know what they had with this guy. Like, he kept his archives, right? Yeah. And he did a documentary on him in wrestling school.
He made one?
Yes.
Do you have that?
Yes.
I don't know that I've ever seen anything from that.
No, there hasn't been anything ever been released. It's him with Dominic DeNucci training him in the ring, and him working spots with Shane Douglas because they were both students. That's incredible. Dominic sitting down with that heavy Italian accent. So he put together a whole little documentary about his time with Dominic DeNucci's wrestling school in Pittsburgh, where he used to go there and sleep in his car.
Yeah. You talked about how when the school was shut, that sometimes he would practice the bumps in the parking lot.
Yeah.
What?
Dedication. Look where it got him.
Yep. That's incredible. That's something you got to digitize, if for no other reason, just to give it to him. And it's a digital file. I don't know if
I should reach out. He may have it. He probably still has it. He was not known to throw a lot of stuff out.
Yeah, but I don't know if he's got a digital version.
Yeah, that's a good question.
He probably could. I mean, he's probably got the money too. But either way, that's just cool, man. That's really cool. I love you guys talking about Cactus and that era. Cornette smashing a guy's car with a bat.
Yeah, that was kind of wild.
He's told that story on his podcast, so we don't need to go into any more detail than he didn't put it out. But
but in real time, just kind of talk about it now.
Yeah,
that it happened.
Insane.
Because I could see him doing it. I could see him with a baseball bat just going wild on somebody's car just because it's him.
I hope that's what inspired the Big Lebowski. This is what happens, Donnie. It's just also crazy because you're all sitting there like, I keep calling Cornette, but he's not calling back, and I think it's because he's dealing with law enforcement right now, and you're like, what a birthday.
Yeah, and the Richard Kimball thing on his answering machine, a lot of the viewers, I don't know if they remember, I don't even know if you know who Richard Kimball is, but there was a doctor, so you must know, The Fugitive. With the one-armed bandit, and that was a highly popular show on television in the 60s.
Ironically, he became a wrestler, and his finishing maneuver was the mandible claw that Mick Foley took.
No kidding. The one-armed bandit?
Yeah, because he knew that it was soft under the tongue.
Ah.
So it was a nerve pinch.
I didn't even know that.
Yeah. But Yeah, and that's where the mandible claw kind of came from. So that's why I thought it was extra funny that Cornette said that, because he would have known he was a wrestler for a short period of time, really brief. But then the other thing, Herb Abrams is back. You said he calls you like once a week. So like for the past like 2 years, he's been MIA, but you were still getting calls from him.
Sporadically. I don't know if it was once a week or not. I don't remember, Marsh, but I guess it was kind of he'd call me.
Maybe it was once a week over the past few months as he was trying to ramp up for the show.
Maybe as he's been kind of noodling and hearing me out, and the fact that I wasn't on the air, I didn't have any use. He couldn't use me.
Was he the type that when you weren't on the air, you might hear from him once every few months just to check in?
Probably, just so he would say that he's still alive or whatever. But Herb was always this eccentric dude, and he'd come out of the blue, and then he'd go back into his seclusion and his big woman's clothing stores or whatever he was freaking doing at the time.
It's just amazing. I almost wish your house had a wiretap. Just the idea of the number of names that would call you regularly just out of the blue.
Yeah, that would have been nice to have.
Just insanity. Who was it? Was it Mil Mascares who called you year after?
Yeah, a year after I got out of the business. Yeah, and
just calls like that would be hysterical to hear. Fuck you.
Yeah,
I ain't paying.
John, it's Mil Mascares. What about this plane ticket?
I told you then. I'm telling you now. It's just so nuts to me because Herb Abrams is also like such a legend of chaos.
Mm-hmm.
That the idea was like, oh, he used to call me all the time. What? Your life is fun. You should write a book.
Yeah, I should write a book. Yeah.
Available on Amazon. Let's see. November 5th, you said the IWAS live show and Weekend of Champions. This is right after an ad, and you have a bit to say about this. This was the show that I'm starting to wonder about, and this I thought was a very interesting development.
Yeah.
Still joined by Don Leibel, who's with us, and also Dave Meltzer will be joining us before too long here today. We'll talk about everything that's going on in pro wrestling, but close to home and close to the heart is a show that I scheduled for November 5th, the International Wrestling All-Stars live show at SUNY Farmingdale, and also our annual Weekend of Champions event, which is in the afternoon. And, well, a lot of things have transpired over the past week or so regarding this show, Don, and I'm sure you're aware of everything that's going on. But a very, very stressful week for this particular person sitting here, and I just want to tell everybody out there what's happening with this show. I booked it a long time ago, several weeks ago, a couple months ago actually, and lo and behold, ECW has booked a show the very same night in Philadelphia. Now, I was on the phone with Paulie Dangerously last night at midnight, 12:30 a.m., and most of the guys that I had booked, he, of course, and Todd Gordon, want to use on their show. So we're having a little bit of a dilemma here as far as who gets who. Last night, Paulie has consented to give me Cactus Jack and Too Cold Scorpio, which was my main event. But I kind of feel like I'm negotiating the guys back that I had already talked to about working the show. So it's an ongoing situation. Right now, all I could tell everyone out there is the show status is up in the air because I'm not going to put and just slap together a card of guys that I don't feel comfortable with. So I am withholding the final commitment for the show now till next week, until I could try to put together something this week that I feel comfortable with presenting to the fans out there. So, Don, of course, you know what's going on, and it's I know you want to come up for the Weekend of Champions.
But as long as there's communication going on, so hopefully things will work out.
Well, there is communication going on, and it's been a stressful week, and I want to salvage the show, but I don't want to present a card to everybody that does not meet my standards,
And it's not easy changing dates because getting the building or the guys already committed probably to other dates for the following week or the week after, whatever. So kind of puts you in a bind right now.
Yeah, it's it's a benefit for the Alumni Association for SUNY Farmingdale, and all I'm going to say is this: is we're going to withhold the final decision until next Sunday's show, and by next Sunday, it's either going to be a go, it's going to be canceled. That's the only way to put it. So feverishly this week, we're going to try to get a lineup assembled that's going to work for us and for the fans out there. That's all I got to say about that situation. So everybody out there who thinks I'm a shill for ECW and being bankrolled, and this program bankrolled by ECW, well, there's your proof that that's just not the case.
That was distressing. And, I didn't really remember Marsh. I mean, what happened? I know there wasn't a convention, but listening back to this show when I uploaded it, that explained what was going on.
Yeah, you couldn't remember why it didn't happen. And I mean, I have a few questions, and I don't want it to be sensitive, but I think about this. This was right before you left the business altogether. And you went and moved to Nashville right after you left the radio, right?
No, I once I got out of wrestling, and in 1995, I was still promoting shows. I was working with AAA. I was promoting shows for them, working with them on shows. I had that great show in Chicago in September of 95 with ECW, ironically in AAA. Okay. But the radio show left the airways in January, and I started working for World Entertainment Associates in New Jersey, who was my agent for the IWAS tour. But yeah, as far as the radio show, I'm kind of thinking now, I probably went back on the air because of the convention.
Yeah.
Because that was the way to have the megaphone to promote it.
Yes.
And if I was going to do a convention in November, getting on the air in August, that gives me enough time to rally the troops and let them know that there's a convention coming.
And it was a dual thing. You're promoting ECW with that convention. You're booking heavily ECW.
Yeah. It was kind of definitely Matt Bourne, Cactus, Two Cold Scorpio, and probably Public Enemy and some other guys, and just to kind of do, not on the grand scale that I used to do 2 days, but it would be a 1-day thing. It was a benefit for their alumni association, and when Paul announced that they were going to run the same night, that was, to me, I didn't sleep the night before, so we'll probably get into in the show. I think I mentioned it, that I was kind of like, I'm fucking done. I mean, I'm done.
Do you think this was the big rift between you and Paul, or did you continue friendship for him for a little while after that?
No, I mean, we worked together on the show in September '95. I was still, I didn't sever the relationship because of this.
Yeah,
but I certainly wasn't comfortable about it, and I felt that, all right, without the performers that I was counting on for the show, why do it? Why just slap something together, especially with with how everyone loved the Weekend of Champions on the previous 4 that we had done.
Yeah.
So it was a rough time. I was just kind of fed up.
I mean, he's the mad scientist, Paul, and he had to have everyone, to be successful in my business, has to have a form of an ego. I just was wondering, because the way you kind of talked about it, one of the callers asks, and I think you say, there's no friends in wrestling. And I wondered if this was like the beginning of an unfortunate severing of your relationship, just because he's getting kind of an ego.
Put a wedge or some tension there.
My show's more important than your show. I've been promoting my show longer, like this back and forth thing.
Yeah, and a lot of this stuff is like all new to me again when I listen to these programs, and as much as I try to remember as much as I can, it was still kind of a time in my life that I wasn't, maybe there are just things I've suppressed over the last 29, 30 years. There's a lot of that. And then when you get to relive it, and then it's almost like a mystery and a puzzle that all of a sudden, oh, there's that piece to this puzzle. Oh, okay, that's why that happened.
Yeah.
Especially during the last several weeks of this program, that was kind of the mindset I was in. I was, I was just trying to salvage it, keep it alive, keep my passion and enthusiasm about it. But I kept getting another reason why that I wanted to kind of get out of it. But I felt trapped that I couldn't get out of it because I didn't have any confidence in myself that I'd be able to do something else in the mainstream, which was so totally wrong of me to analyze myself that way years ago. Because when I finally made the decision and got out, really got out, my life just turned into a journey of just wonderful success and great things.
Yeah. And this felt to me like this had to be kind of this had to hurt, like here was your best friend in the business. You're trying to put him over on this show. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden he just pulls the rug out from underneath you. Like, I don't need you. And you're like, but I thought we were in this together. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. And for whatever reason, I don't know why that was the date, because obviously they had access to ECW Arena whenever they wanted it.
And they've changed dates several times before. You've mentioned it on the show. Oh, this has been canceled. They moved it here.
Right. So yeah, it was certainly something that was a big blow to me.
Yeah. Yeah, I could see that really disenfranchising you from the business on top of the other stuff going on. Yeah. I'm not trying to overhype it, but this probably felt a little bit like a stabbing in the back. You know what I mean? Like, I've came back to promote your show and my show, and now I have no show, but you get all this promotion. Like that sucks, man, from somebody you were so close with. Just made me wonder. I just wondered because, like you said, you're not sure where everything kind of like split between the two of you. And I was like, man, there's a lot of potential tension here. So, but if you guys still work together a little while later, then maybe like you said, it was just a bit of a tension.
Yeah, it was a hiccup, a pretty big one.
Yeah.
But you learn to turn the page, and I did. But yeah, it's kind of like I felt like what I was striving to do. I mean, the roadblocks were just kind of beginning to overwhelm me.
Yeah. And like you said, if you came back, I mean, it stands to reason you would come back to promote this and that. And then when this show doesn't happen, it's like, what, 1 or 2 more months? And you said, forget it.
Yeah. I mean, as far as I know, based on the tapes, January 20th, 1995, and there's the cassette. It didn't even list the show number. It didn't list any guests. I haven't heard it yet, and I haven't heard it in all these years. So I'm curious to know what's going to be on this last show. And then the show just disappears.
Yeah. So I mean, like, you had just a couple more months, and you said, what am I doing this for again? So just kind of a lot. You guys talk a little bit about Ivan Koloff retiring. And then that's when the surprise drop in from David of the Power Twins, as you look up and you're like, oh,
look who's here.
Yeah. He was there to put over that he's going to be on Abram's show. Turbo. Yeah. He said he's been doing a bunch of charity events with Sunny Beach. He said, can you believe it? They called him a wrestling champion. He talks about how he was on Letterman, he was on the Emmys, he was in Die Hard. So they're starting to get a lot of these little Hollywood spots.
Yeah, they had a unique gimmick for sure, and I'd seen them on Letterman, and they were just who they were. I mean, there's these big hulks, bullies, and just these big funny guys, man.
So good. They got a good look and a good sound. It's a shame they got screwed the way they did in the wrestling business, because they could have done a lot with them.
Well, a lot of it may have to do with personal attitude. They were never really the most gracious people. And then, you combine that with being trained by David Schultz, who was a persona non grata to the WWF at the time, and, whether WCW ever really considered them. But they didn't have the best attitude in the world for guys who were at their level.
Yeah. Huh.
They were
That
never
definitely doesn't help.
gracious. They were never gracious, ever.
Not a lot of thank yous.
No.
You get Meltzer on the phone. Meltzer, you told Meltzer that you've had a really long night trying to salvage Weekend of Champions. But then you guys get into the fall brawl.
Yeah.
You guys are breaking down the whole thing. But there was one in particular segment where you guys talk about Ricky Steamboat versus Steve Austin that I thought aged really well. And I thought it was really cool because we're, towards the end of 94? He doesn't break out until 96, 97, 98-ish.
Yeah.
So a couple years removed.
Yep.
Also on the card tonight, Ricky the Dragon Steamboat defending his United States title from the guy he won it from, stunning Steve Austin. And I tell you, Steve Austin's interviews over the last several weeks just keep getting better and better and better. He is certainly someone that has unlimited potential. But tonight going against Steamboat in a match that should be good, but it's getting a little bit tiresome seeing the two work against each other time and time again.
Hey, I don't think there's any big what's the word? Just any major excitement about this match, but they'll probably have the best match on the card. Yeah. I would think. They certainly have the last couple of big shows, and the one thing about Steamboat is when the money's on the table on the big show. I mean, Steamboat's not going to have a bad match. He almost never does.
Yeah, unlimited potential.
Yeah,
his interviews are incredible.
Yeah,
this is amazing to hear from you guys. In late 94, King of the Ring doesn't happen until 96.
Mm-hmm.
He ends up being fired from WCW because they say he just doesn't have it.
Yeah, that was unceremoniously released by Bischoff.
Yeah, like less than a year later, ends up in ECW.
Yes,
where Paul gives him the mic to go crazy,
and that was kind of a turning point for Austin because he felt really good there. He liked ECW.
Yeah. And then when he shows up in WWF, they pin him with $1 Million Man and don't let him talk.
The Ringmaster.
It's just crazy to hear where you guys are like, his interviews are getting incredible. He's got unlimited potential. And then it was 2 more years of struggle for this guy to just talk. It's nuts.
Yeah.
You guys knew what you saw. So
we were wrestling experts, Marsh.
You were. I know that there's an old interview we heard, a year ago, where you had Paul Heyman on, and you talked about if you had one guy, who would you strap everything to? And you just said Steve Austin.
Mm-hmm.
He goes, that guy can go to the moon. And then to see you guys talking about it years before anyone gave him the chance, were you at all shocked when Austin 316 happened?
Just because of how fast it happened after that, I was kind of shocked that. Yeah, I knew he had the potential, but he always they didn't want him to talk, and they slapped him with that stupid gimmick, and then he just kept. He had the self-confidence. He knew what he could do, and he caught fire when they let him open his mouth and do his thing.
Yeah, that's what I feel about LA Knight. I feel like what I'm feeling about LA Knight is probably what you felt about with Steve Austin.
Yeah. Well, this guy is a superstar. I mean, he really is. I mean, he's got the crowd behind him, and they do have to really push him, and which it looks like they're starting to do, because I think he is that could be the next generational superstar.
I think so too. And I saw him when he was in NWA, and I remember coming back and just overhyping him, and I was like, I'm really not trying to overhype, but I feel like I'm watching like a young Rock, Steve Austin, Kurt Angle type. Like this guy feels big.
Yeah.
And then watching him struggle through his way up to see him finally be LA Knight, and within just a couple months, just have the entire crowd the way he has him. It's kind of like, wow.
And now they're pairing him with things with Cena, and so they are elevating this guy.
Yeah.
But I'm fearful that. And we digress a little bit, but I am fearful that they're never going to push somebody to the point where they become that big. Just because they don't want to, another crossover person that starts to do movies and all. I just don't know. Maybe it's different, a little different environment now that Endeavor's taken over, and they're, William Morris, their talent agency. So who knows? Maybe they'll change their philosophy and policy and start making more crossovers. I guess it's going to be really interesting to see as this merger's done, and now they're, Triple H is in control, and we'll see. But LA Knight, yeah, certainly can be one of those generational talents, kind of like an MJF in a different way.
Yeah. I'm excited to see how it all goes, especially with Endeavor, like you said. I got to imagine that Cena and The Rock hasn't hurt their image. You know what I mean? They got to not want none. I can see them not wanting everyone to just jump ship, but they got to want a couple special ones. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But we'll see. You guys talk about Cactus's last match in WCW, and then he's going to go hit the Independents. That his interviews are really good coming into this match, and that he was referencing how announcers have handled him losing his ear as being a big point of contention.
Mm-hmm.
When he lost his ear in Germany, did they just kind of like brush past that? Like nothing
Brush
happened?
past it. They didn't take advantage of it. They didn't, they could have exploited it and turned it into something really big with Vader. I mean, it could have been huge.
Yeah.
They shit the bed on it.
I mean, WWF took better advantage of the ear.
Yes.
I mean, even the Mankind mask had the opening on the one side so you could see the missing ear.
See it, yeah.
Yeah. And his entrance music, when they came out with the CDs at the time, they had the Ode to Freud, and the intro of it was he's like screaming about the ear that was ripped from my skull. And
yes.
I just remember that from being a kid, just being like, oh God.
Yeah, for as much of a smart dude that Eric Bischoff is, there were some things that he didn't really see. And Mick Foley, none of them really saw the potential of Foley, from Ole Anderson to Flair, and Bischoff. I mean, they just didn't see what the guy can do. Even McMahon.
Man, yeah, Vince.
When Jim Ross lobbied, of course, Vince has that famous line, all right, but I'm not going to let anyone see his face. No. So anyway, I mean, but he proved people wrong time and time again, over and over again. And here's a guy who just knew, like Austin, like LA Knight, that this is who I am and this is what I can be. And I'm just not going to let anything stand in my way on this journey.
Keep pushing through.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. I have this clip. It's a little bit longer because it was really fascinating. You and Meltzer and Wade Keller all bought UFC 3.
Yes.
And you guys reviewed UFC.
Yes, because that was like brand new. It was just really starting to pick up some steam.
Brand new. Let's hear what you guys thought about it, because I thought this was fascinating to hear 29 years later.
Yeah.
Ultimate Fighting Championships 3, which took place from Charlotte, North Carolina on September the 9th. I purchased the pay-per-view. An interesting show. Could this be possibly the wave of the future here in the United States regarding pro wrestling?
I wouldn't say, well, it's not pro wrestling, but I wouldn't say it's a wave of the future, but as far as as compared with the style of pro wrestling that we have phasing out and this type of thing being like something that'll take it over, but it might be something
to compete against it.
Judging from the show shockingly well on pay-per-view. It had a 0.65 buy rate, which is 140,000, 150,000 in that range number of buys, which is equivalent to it's more than any WCW pay-per-view show except for the Flair Hogan match over probably the last year or so. So and they did this with no television, just advertising on the cable preview channel pretty much, and everyone in the wrestling business I know was that found out about this was absolutely shocked at how well it did. So it's interesting. It's in Japan they have similar type things, or maybe not similar. It's hard to really to say, but they have like a shoot promotion, so to speak. They have 3 of them that wrestle a more realistic looking style, and they're very popular. But yet pro wrestling is also still very popular. It didn't hurt pro wrestling. It changed pro wrestling. It introduced submission holds. More submission holds to Japanese pro wrestling. Now, here, I think that most people who bought the show that I spoke with seem to really like the show, and I think that does have an audience for the future, at least short-term future in this country.
Yeah, it was a brutal show, and then I saw some of the video cassettes before buying the pay-per-view. Do you think these matches worked, or are they a shoot? Some of them maybe, sometimes it's hard to tell. I was reading The Torch, and Wade was Wade Keller was talking about the fact that if it was a work, it wouldn't surprise him, and he was watching some of it on slow-mo, but a lot of the stuff was very, very brutal. Your personal opinion, any observations from you regarding whether this is actually a work or a good-looking work or a shoot?
I don't know.
It's hard to tell,
funny.
isn't it?
To me, when I watched it, I thought it was a shoot. I read what Wade Keller wrote, and I did not watch, punches in slow motion and things like that. You watch a lot of boxing and things like that, and it's just different. I know that when I've watched like Rings and UWFI and Pancras, all over in Japan, which are supposed to be shoots. Now UWFI is very easy for me to tell that it's not, and Rings was also very easy. I went to a live show, and because the matches are built for drama, and it didn't seem like these matches were. I know one wrestling promoter who tried to get a pro wrestler in there was told, point blank that the matches are shoots, but that perhaps that they pick the opponents, because if you've noticed on these shows, I mean we've never had Royce Gracie is the star of the thing, although he did not win the last tournament. He's 6'1", about 176 pounds, and he's technically he's incredible. However, and anyone who's been involved in like amateur wrestling or anything like this knows that technique, in a shoot situation, technique, when you're the same size, technique is very, very important, and technique is also important no matter what, but there comes a certain point where size and strength, once you have enough of a size and strength advantage against a guy who also has some technique, is going to overwhelm superior technique. And, again, we've never seen a really great, wrestler fighter type guy that's in the 280-pound range in there with Gracie. I mean, we see Ken Shamrock, who for his size, I'm sure is a really tough guy. But again, we're talking about a 215-pound guy. So, maybe they're picking opponents. I mean, we're talking, and then again, I don't know. I couldn't say, is it a shoot? Is it not a shoot? It looked realistic. It looked more realistic than the Japanese that do that stuff, and the Japanese are generally better at wrestling than Americans. So
yeah,
I don't know.
It was enjoyable, and it was exciting at times. I guess Ken Wayne Shamrock does work for Pancras over in Japan. He is a pro wrestler, and he left the tournament. He had won, I guess, 2 matches. And then he was scheduled to compete in the finals, I believe, and I guess there was some type of political situation that took place in the back, and he decided he wasn't going to compete.
I got the impression when after his second match that his ankle was out.
Yeah.
And, if it is a shoot and you've got a bad ankle, you don't want to go in there. And they were brutal matches, and I don't know that anyone can get in 3 street fights against guys who are good fighters, one after another in one night without coming out really banged up, even if you win. Yeah. And so I don't know. In the Japanese magazines, the story I guess that was over there is that he didn't like the idea that so many people were throwing bare knuckle punches to the face in this tournament. Of course, he did it too. In his first match, he was throwing bare knuckle punches to the face. So I don't know exactly what the deal is. Maybe there was an agreement. Maybe there's an agreement among the guys that, yes, it's a shoot. We go all out, but we're not going to be punching each other in the face as hard as we can. You know what I mean? Where it's a controlled, it's not, or maybe it's something else. I will say this, though. If this thing continues to grow in popularity, and they use the same guys over and over again, my feeling is that the guys eventually, just out of self-preservation, and out of self-respect for each other, probably, they get together and figure out how can we do this without killing each other. Yeah. You know what I mean? I mean, because it's just like nobody wants to sit there and get punched in the face. The money rewards are nice, but they're not. They're not like a heavyweight boxing match.
Yeah, the top prize was like $60,000, but that's something we'll be following here at the program. The next Ultimate Fight Championships will be taking place from Tulsa, Oklahoma, and that'll be in December. So we'll keep you abreast on what's happening there.
Really fascinating discussion to see where UFC is now, what it's become. He's, of course, part of that Endeavor company, with the WWE. I mean, they're so huge. And back then it was like, because you were so jaded from pro wrestling, because everything was a work, you didn't know, like, is this a work too? Yeah. So that was the questions that I had. And even Dave wasn't like totally like 1,000% sure that, who knows?
And Wade was slowing down the tapes to look for the connection on the hits. He was like, are they just really working it? And I love that Dave is such a fan of Japanese pro wrestling. He's like, well, the Japanese do work shoots better.
Yeah.
I can't imagine America.
Yeah, I mean, but Dave, look at it, how much he embraced UFC and how big a part even of the Wrestling Observer that UFC became, and how ingrained he became into covering UFC as it grew. And I do remember, the controversies back then when it first started, that the late senator from Arizona, John McCain, a former presidential candidate, was trying to outlaw it. And they were barred from New York for many years because they couldn't get a license to compete because of they called it barbaric. And it almost went away because of politicians.
Yeah.
And regulation.
I still think that earlier UFC is something special because of the concept is something we just can't do.
Yeah.
But it was the idea of like styles of trained fighters. Mm-hmm. What's the superior style of martial art?
That's right. Like the Brazilian style with Royce Gracie. I mean, there was a lot of different elements there. And then you had the Kenny Shamrocks of the world, and even Dan Severn going in. I mean, it was really an exciting time to see it and to see the infancy and the birth of it. And it became huge, and it really exploded when they had that TV show on.
Yeah. And Dave even kind of called it there. If this thing blows up, what's it going to look like later? Because I don't know if they can continue doing this thing. And you're like, you're right. Like, it had to change.
Right. I mean,
now everyone fights the same basic style.
Yeah. 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 So that's why I love listening to some of this stuff, because it's so historic. And, where else do you get an opportunity to kind of say, all right, UFC is just really starting out. We're having discussions about it. And here we are, 29 years later, and look what a big factor it is in sports.
Yeah, now it's huge. The Rock made that, what was it BMF title?
Mm-hmm.
They had him debut over there. Like, UFC's figured out a way.
Yeah, they have. Yeah, I mean, Dana White.
Listening to you guys put over Ken Shamrock years before he goes to WWF was really cool.
Yeah, I mean, that was the thing. That was too. It was like Kenny Shamrock. This guy, didn't know much about him except for that he was this kind of a shoot fighter guy.
Yeah, it was just cool. I was glued to that one just because, like you said, where UFC has come and the conversation about it that long ago, I don't think people realized that there was a lot of, was it real or was it not? People didn't know.
We were all kind of questioning it. We're like, this can't be real. Can it?
Well, because you also just had shoot wrestling in Japan.
Yeah.
Remember that whole promotion was coming through and everyone was calling, is it actually shoot or not? And you're like, I don't know.
Right.
So now that this comes out, you're like, it's American. I don't know.
Blowing up your head.
Yeah. You cover with Meltzer, if Cornette's still affiliated with WWF. He says that he is. Cornette talks about WWF losing time slots in the Bay Area, that it shifted a time slot in New York City. Mm-hmm. What was going on here? TV rights was an issue?
It was probably rating. It was probably numbers. It was probably just like they were not in a good place rating wise or pay-per-view buy. It was a down. The business was not in a good place. People just still trying to recover from, the trial of McMahon and getting back on track. And it was stale, and it was being marketed to kids. And it was just kind of a, it wasn't must-see TV, and it lost its luster with everything that had gone on previously with the scandals and the trial and the ratings. And so television stations were like, screw this, we're going to put something in there maybe to conform a little bit better in the key demographics that we're looking to attract.
Yeah. You do get to callers, but right before the callers, you, Dave, and Dave all Daves. Talk about the Daves. There's the power duo right there, Dave and Dave.
Yeah, what a tag team.
Yeah. You guys talk about Herb Abrams for a few minutes.
Oh, good.
We'll be taking calls for Dave Meltzer of the Wrestling Observer newsletter. We have Dave from the Power Twins here, who has been participating in that benefit for the mayors of New York for the Children's Handicapped Children's Fund. As you said last night, Missy Hyatt was out there. Johnny Polo, you were out there last night? Yeah, so. And Captain Lou. So all this
And I kind of think that he paid somebody off at Sports Channel because he had a couple of executives there that maybe he paid them for their help and assistance getting shit done. I don't know. I can't be 100% sure, but the fact that he could come back after such a long layoff and because of all the controversy and everything that happened with the UWF, and then he gets automatically he's going to be live on Sports Channel with a extravaganza from Vegas. It was bizarre. It was fucking bizarre.
There was nothing about that guy or anything he ever did that didn't come with a ton of questions.
Yeah.
Which is awesome.
I remember that show. I remember going to Vegas. I remember being in a limo with Mr. Perfect, who I don't think legally appeared on the show, but he was in the limo, and that's Sid too. I remember. I think I brought a tape recorder there to try to get some promos, and that's when I went to Sid, and that's when he uttered that famous. You're listening to Pro Wrestling Spotlight with this big fat John Arezzi, So anyway, it'll be interesting. It'll be another spoiler because I haven't heard any of the shows post.
Did you end up using it or no?
I don't remember.
Let's see if it pops up somewhere. If it pops up somewhere, that'd be great. I get to see you like sitting there with the mic, and then you soon start just being like,
"Yeah, I'm just here for abuse."
Donnie's amazing Sid story.
Oh yeah.
Comes to mind.
What a bunch of characters, what a time. What just characters and bizarre individuals. What a fucking circus.
To me, that's the most fun part of the business, isn't the actual business. It's the monkey business, really. At the end of it, like the circus that's outside of the ring.
And it's so changed now with, how big everything is with these public companies and Tony Khan with, all of the craziness, but the product and it's insane.
Yeah.
This business has always been insane.
It's wild. I mean, at least for one regard, the amount of wrestlers nowadays that are actually just nice people is pretty cool.
Yeah.
But it's not as interesting.
It's not as interesting as it was back then. No, it is not. It is not.
From a fan perspective, I love that when I meet somebody I look up to now, they're probably going to be very nice to me.
Yes.
But from the insider perspective, it's kind of like boring to read about nowadays. Like, whatever. They're
not like
having
years
a kid,
ago.
they're engaged.
Like, everyone was crazy. The drugs were flowing. The steroids were being injected. Everyone was out of their minds. Everyone was paranoid about each other. Everyone was stabbing each other in the back. I mean, there's still a lot of that goes on, obviously, but it's more politically correct, even in the way you stab somebody in the back today. It's a little bit more politically correct.
Yeah.
But back then, it was like the golden age of being fucked. We'll have to put an explicit warning on this particular episode because the F-bombs are going to be flying like even more.
They ain't backstabbing like they used to, kid.
Yeah. Where are the scissors when you need them?
I just wonder, like, with the newsletters, it's like there's more now than ever that are making more money than ever. And you're like, but the business backstage is more boring than ever. There's a lot of interesting stuff, yes.
Yeah.
But it's TV rights. This couple's engaged. Mm-hmm. They just broke up.
This one's on OnlyFans now.
Yeah. This person's got OnlyFans now. But, like, back then, it was all like, I think Sid tried to kill Arn with scissors.
Yes.
And you're like, you'd think you'd want more news then. Who's got the update? So it's just nuts to me. It's nuts and it's interesting and it's fun. Mm-hmm. Speaking of, you do get to the callers. And John, your callers were on fire tonight.
They are on fire, yes.
Was this a day show or a night show? I don't remember.
Day. It was an afternoon show. 10. I think it was noon to 2 every Sunday.
Remember we noticed last time that the early shows had more adults and the late shows had more children, and we thought that was weird.
Yeah.
Definitely reverse.
And now we have a bunch of degenerates.
Yeah. Starting off.
Fucks.
Yeah.
I'm thinking about this show and I'm getting pissed.
Yeah. At a certain, like, you had to be ready early with your finger on that button. Because I feel like you felt it because it did not go long before you started cutting people. But starting with the degenerate of the Power Twins, you have a little back and forth with Dave, and then you take 3 phone calls back to back that were all notable.
And what would Meltzer be thinking as he saw this unfold?
Dude, Meltzer was such a crack in this one too, because he kept his phone kept going mute or whatever.
Yeah, and also if you hear there's like a chirping, almost like one of them alarm when your battery's dead in your alarm. And I noticed that on the last appearance that he had too. So imagine living with a chirping alarm 24/7 and where you live and work,
and not being bothered by it.
Yeah, because that's the one thing out of everything in life that annoys you. When I hear a chirping, like an alarm that battery needs replacement, that is the most annoying sound in the fucking world. And here's a guy that's on the phone with us, and his phone and the chirping, you'll hear it. It's a little chirp, little bit, but it was on the last time he was on too. So I was thinking to myself listening, I was like, why didn't he change that battery already?
Yeah, for me, time stops until that goes away.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever it takes.
I took a hammer to one once because I couldn't. I was like,
this has to stop.
It's driving me crazy. That's like that. That's the one sound that will absolutely drive me crazy.
Yeah. And then I liked every now and again you'd be like, Dave, are you there? And suddenly you just hear like, hello.
Yeah.
Like, Dave, stay on the line. But here is 3 calls back to back.
Okay. There we go.
If you want, I'll give you a report from the show if you want.
Hey, I might go out there. I don't know yet. I have a frequent flyer ticket that I have to use, and I'm interested in maybe going there Friday and coming back Saturday night.
Is that for a cargo plane, John?
Yes. Get it. Don't you have somewhere to go?
Yeah, in a little while. I have to check on some of my investments in the NFL this morning.
We're going to take some calls. Let's go to the phones right now. Thanks, everyone, for being patient out there. But lots to talk about. We're with Dave Meltzer of the Wrestling Observer newsletter, and also sitting in with us, Dave from the Power Twins. Let's go to Luke from Rockville Center. Luke, you're first here.
Hello, this is Yoshi, the Widow Green Dinosaur. I want you to be my...
This guy was holding for an hour. Over an hour to say that? Some people got to get a life. Some people just don't have a life, and this is what they do.
Let me tell you, John, this guy obviously watches too many cartoons and spends lots of time by himself.
For anyone who was out there for over an hour holding to say that, Central Islip Hospital, is that still open, taking patients?
I believe so, John.
Okay, let's go to Matt from St. James.
And they have a lot of full closets there.
Matt, you're next.
Hello, yeah, I have 2 questions. Okay, the first question, I was watching All American today on USA, the WF show, and they were talking about a new show called The Zone coming out. Do you have any information about that?
No, I haven't heard of it. Dave, have you heard of The Zone? Dave, are you there?
I've heard of the Twilight Zone.
I think Dave's in the Twilight.
Hello?
Dave, are you there?
I'm here.
Have you heard of something called The Zone?
No, I have not.
And they were plugging that on WWF Challenge today? On All American. Okay, that's on the USA Network.
Really? First I heard of it.
No. And your second question?
More action and less talk.
You are now entering the
More
zone.
wrestling and less talk?
Yeah.
Interesting. Another, maybe they're going to change the name of one of the shows or change the format.
Okay, and another question for the Power Twins. On May 25th in Long Island, you were wrestling Warlord and Hercules, you and your brother.
Okay.
Do you remember that?
Vaguely.
Okay, do you remember there was a kid in the leg brace?
Remember what?
Kid in the leg brace?
No, I don't remember.
Yeah, and you were picking on him.
Oh, so? What's the point?
I'm going to come kill you now.
What's the point?
I'm going to come kill you. I guess it was Matt. Thanks for your call, Matt. 955-1240.
Thanks for that very handy piece of information. Go back and watch your cartoons.
All right, let's take another call here. Bill from Lindenhurst.
Yeah, John, how you doing? Didn't ECW know that you had all the wrestlers and everything booked for your convention on November 5th?
Well, they certainly knew I had a card scheduled.
See, they don't even care about you, you know? Aren't you supposed to be, like, friends with them, you know?
Well, you learn that there's really no friends in wrestling, okay? When it comes to business, there are no friends, okay?
That's right, you know?
And that's life in a big city. I got to deal with it the best way I can and try to put together a good show. If I can't put together a good show, there won't be a show.
Right, and I heard the rumor that your convention might not be happening because you had all your money wrapped up in sex change operations.
Another brilliant caller here at the program. 955.
John, can I say something here for a second?
Yes.
If I just want to say to these people out listening to the show, if you're a moron, if you're a loser, if you have no life, if you're a geek, if you enjoy spending a lot of time in the closet with farm animals, please don't call up. Don't waste our time, all right?
Yeah, a lot to unpack on that one. And the thing is, once you poke them, like he was doing, and even I did to a certain extent, but that's only going to motivate more people to call in and be assholes.
There was 2 people that didn't even say their question. You recognized their voice and hung up.
Yeah. Yeah.
There was 2 of them that happened where they just, hey, John, hey, all right, next caller. And David Meltzer was even like, what was that? And you just like said, like, you just kept going. This next one's.
And what was going on with Dave's voice? It sounded so high pitched when we brought him back. Like, Dave, are you there? And it didn't even sound like him for a minute. What the hell was he doing behind the scenes?
It was weird. He kept muting his phone. Yeah.
What a bizarre show.
My favorite one was the first caller, where it's like, I'm the widow green dinosaur. And you're like, an hour. That guy was waiting for an hour. Like, you just watched the line on hold for an hour.
Oh.
He's like, to me, that was my favorite part, is when he was waiting for an hour. Like, you acknowledge how long he was waiting as the ridiculous nature. Like, it was unbelievable.
Yeah.
And it was so funny.
It was.
Dude, on the phone for an hour waiting. This is my time. It's amazing. But that wasn't the end of those types of calls.
Oh, really?
Yeah, no, we have more. That was just the first group. You know,
you can hear all of them on Patreon, by the way, because we're not playing them all. But that
we're
was
definitely not playing them all.
There's plenty there.
And those were your first 3 calls of the day.
That's very nice. I love.
You didn't even get
listeners.
You didn't even get one good call in first. You're like 3 in, and you're like,
oh, how long is this show going on today? Do we have to do 2 hours?
Yeah, right. Let's see. You got Pat from Jackson. Pat from Jacksonville asked if when ECW was going to go to MSG, and his concern was like, do you think they're going to cut down on the violence when they do it? And Meltzer says that he doesn't believe that they could survive unless they're violent, because they're trying to be a violent alternative, and they're not going to be able to make it if they do what WCW is doing.
Right. Can't water it down at this point.
And so at that point, I never got to see the MSG stuff, but that remained largely the same, right?
Mm-hmm.
Did they cut anything out?
It was their show. It was like the same. They didn't. Maybe they did a couple of localized bumpers or something, but
yeah,
it was the same content and the same violence.
Okay. I didn't know if maybe they cut a couple specific matches that may have been too violent or anything like that, but
I don't remember.
Nothing stand out. One guy called in, says he just subscribed to Meltzer, got extra magazines. He was really excited about it. Oh, and he talks about being at a USWA taping. He was second row with a friend of his, and Lawler came out because these 2 kids right in front of him were chanting for Sid the whole time. And Lawler came down and asked if they're enjoying the show, and they said yes. And he said, well, if you don't stop chanting for Sid, you're going to be enjoying it from the parking lot. He's going to throw him out. So you guys had kind of a neat conversation. I didn't pull the whole clip because it runs clip long, but Meltzer talks about how Dusty wouldn't do live interviews after a while because he was getting booed. And a lot of times it comes down to the presentation they want to go across the air.
Yeah.
But like you guys say, you know, the fans are paying. It's better to have a arena full of fans chanting the wrong person than half full of people chanting the right one.
It's true.
I thought it was a neat conversation, so the patrons get to hear the whole thing. The Power Twin Dave did say that he agrees that people should be able to cheer whoever they want, just the same as he should be able to spit on whoever he wants.
What a great guy.
Yeah. First 2 rows may get wet. Let's see. Al from New Jersey. What happened to the Quebecers? Johnny Polo, Marty Jannetty, Lex Luger. And who are the masked men, the Patriot and Knuckleball. And I forgot about Knuckleball, Steve Lombardi and Dave Wilkes. We're a tag team. But he was just asking where all these people were, and then said, okay. The other guy who was sitting at the USWA show calls in too. Says my buddy called earlier, and he says it seems like ECW is the only place where you can act however you want as a fan. And you guys talk about the sign guy in the front row and how much you like him. Let's see. This one's about Rick Rude. Oh, Sabu was supposed to go to WWF, but they wanted to change his name, so he just said no.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that.
I wonder if he had a chance to do it over again, would he care and change his name to make that money? I mean, he had a snake bit career, that guy.
Exactly. I wondered that too. When I heard that, I was like, man, I wonder if that was the right call or not.
He should have been a multimillionaire today.
Yeah. That brings us to our next little series of clips. You have a couple of callers and a follow-up on Power Twin Dave's NFL investments this morning.
Okay.
Okay, we're back with the program. Right now, Jets 14, Miami zip.
No, it's the other way around, John.
No, it's not, is it?
14-0. Miami's up.
You just said the Jets were up 6-0 before the break.
No, I said it was 6-0 Miami.
Oh, is that what you said?
That's what I said, John.
It's not what you said.
Well, why do you take that sandwich out of your ear?
955-1240. We're here with Dave Meltzer, the Wrestling Observer newsletter. Dave from the Power Twins is here as well. We're going to go to Huntington Station now and talk to Wallace.
John, how are you? So Sabu?
Let's go to Buddy from Bohemia.
Hello, hey, I got two questions. First, who do you think is going to be the next challenge for Razor Ramon?
Owen Hart.
Owen Hart, yeah.
And I got another question for Dave the Power Twin. Yeah, how come you fucking...
955-1240, another one of Dave's fans. We're both getting hit pretty harder today.
I don't understand, John. These are like the same people as they go to the shows we wrestle at and they wave the number ones at us, but it's like the wrong finger. I don't get it.
Yeah, well, that's life in a big city. 955-1240 is the number to call. We'll be taking some more calls and comments with you. Of course...
Should I do the advisory again, John?
What is that?
Okay. If you're a moron, you're a loser, a geek, if your IQ is lower than your shoe size, don't bother pick up the phone. Don't have anybody dial it for you, because you're probably a moron. You're going to have a stupid question, say something stupid over the air. We'll have to bleep you out anyway. So just stay home, watch your cartoons, and spend a lot of time in the barn with the farm animals, and keep it to yourself, because we really don't want to talk to you.
Thank you very much. But most of the calls that do call into the program are indeed great wrestling fans. And we're going to hopefully take another one right now and go to Brooklyn and speak to Mark.
Let me ask you a question, John.
Yes, what is that?
What has the IQ of 10 and 6 teeth in his mouth?
Oh, I know this one.
It's an old one.
Answer it.
The first 5 rows of a wrestling crowd.
And that's not before WWF turned it into family entertainment now.
Yeah, now they have 8 teeth.
He's so articulate.
He was quick on the draw.
Yeah.
I like Meltzer. Oh, I know this one.
I know that.
Like, he didn't need to chime in at all. He added nothing.
The editor and publisher of the New York Times of Wrestling.
Yeah.
He was probably sitting in Campbell, California, saying, "What the hell am I doing? What happened to this show? It used to be, edgy and cutting, and now it's just kind of like a circus."
I am, as much as I've given current Meltzer a really hard time, I do think it'd be great to have him on the show and find out about how much fun he had coming on your show.
I would love it.
Just
but he's so insulated,
Yeah.
I don't know. People may want to. I don't know what the hell the deal is with him. Why those requests have been unanswered, and it's just sad. Why not come and reminisce? I mean, you had Ron Scholar on. He was here, and
he was great.
He was really good, and I've heard from Ron since, and he really had a good time reminiscing, and he felt a little melancholy in regard to some of the hard-hitting things that he said. I was like, listen, you're 30 years younger. What the hell? You were getting attacked from all people. You didn't know you were new to the business, and you're trying to do something innovative and cool, and this is what you decided to enter years ago.
Yeah, I mean, no one. I can't imagine somebody holding a person accountable for a thing they said 30 years ago in the heat of the moment. You know what I mean? And he wasn't overly harsh.
No,
he didn't say anything slanderous. He just was clearly frustrated with the situation he was in because he was passionately involved.
And he was very confident of what his presentation was with the partnership with AAA. He was confident, and he knew that it was successful and it had great potential. But he was up against it with dealing with the AAA offices and dealing with the way the promotion and their performers did business. Like, tomorrow will be okay, but tomorrow never comes, and you just do it when you do it. So he was frustrated, and then you get involved with WCW, and before you know it, I mean, he's getting sabotaged with some of the bigger names in the promotion. Why do we have to have this? Yeah. We don't need this.
It's a frustrating thing when you love something passionately and you know that everything should work and this is incredible and it's not working.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like everything's here, but we're just not getting it done. What's the problem? You know what I mean? That's a frustrating thing when you passionately love something. I mean, as much grief as people have given Heyman when he joined the WWF the way that he did.
Yeah.
That had to be a rough week for him. Yeah. Because of how much he passionately loved all of that. And I also think it was really smart. People don't always talk about why he signed the way that he did, so other people wouldn't end up acquiring a debt and stuff. Like the way the bankruptcy thing happened was in a way that other people didn't get screwed. So he was still looking out for people when it looked like they weren't. So, I mean, yeah, Ron was amazing. 30 years ago, he was frustrated, justifiably, and he didn't say anything mean. So he just got nothing to worry about. I actually heard from Roy today, friend of the show, had just listened to that episode and he loved it. He thought it was absolutely great.
Yeah, I got to get back to him. He texted me too. I haven't responded yet because he wanted to know when Ron was coming back because he had a bunch of questions about that show.
Yeah, absolutely. He was there.
Yeah, he was.
So we'll see how that plays out. Let's see here. Where are the Steiners? I mean, you got a bunch of calls just kind of really asking about generic stuff. Just, where are the Steiners? What's going on with Backlund? One person did ask about the show in Vegas. That's when you talk about the arena holds 17,000 and you were told they've sold 2,000 so far.
And that had to come directly from Herbo Turbo.
Yeah. Mr. Lightning.
Mr. Electricity.
That's what it was. One kid asked who's going to be coming into WWF. Any word on Nikita Koloff? And that's when Meltzer says that he's injured a few years ago and collecting disability now, and he feels that he's probably going to be through. But they talk about Animal coming back. Someone asked who the Kamikaze Kid was in ECW, and you guys said you had no idea. Was that not Sean Waltman? Was he not the Kamikaze Kid for a period? But he was never in ECW, right?
He wasn't.
Yeah. And not even that ECW, but Eastern Championship.
Yeah.
I don't think. Let's see. Dave was on HBO and on Sci-Fi, and he said he's very talented and modest. Someone calls in and says, "What's the story with Bruiser before you hang up?" Let's see. You guys talk about Doink $1 Million Man. So this is kind of where we get towards the end here. We have 1, 2, 3, 4 calls. I put rapid fire back to back because none of these calls last longer than a minute.
Yeah,
because they give you reasons to hang up. But
do they really?
But it is caboosed by Georgiann Makropolous, who calls in for you.
I can't wait to talk about that.
Okay, back with the program here. 955-1240 is the number to call. Let's go to Farmingdale and speak to Kyle.
Yes, I have a question for him.
I guess people have taken crazy pills today. Nick from Oakdale.
I don't know, John. I think people are getting too much sugar in their diet.
Could be. Nick from Oakdale, you're next.
Is it true you have a smoke?
Cut that off pretty quick.
John, what do you inspire these people to have to call you and say these rude things to you? What did you say to these people, John?
Well, people don't have... there are a certain amount of them out there that really have nothing better to do than... they're cowards, pretty much.
Nice guy you are, John. I don't know why these people are so rude to you.
Well, come in the parking lot. I'll meet them in the back.
And then do what? Invite them to a buffet?
Yeah, that's right. Invite them to a buffet.
Hey, John, I think there's another brain surgeon calling in.
Well, let's take another call and see who we have on the line. John from Smithtown, you're next.
Hello?
Yes.
Yeah, what happened to Crush?
Crush, from what I understand, this week left the WWF.
Oh, do you know where he might be?
Well, he might be out there looking for work like a number of other guys now trying to get independent dates.
What fucking date?
955-1240 is the number to call.
I was that guy took a break from his studies and studying to be a rocket scientist to call you up, John.
See, I've gotten calls for months and letters for months, people wanting me to come back on the air, and then you come back on the air and you have idiots like this, which
unbelievable,
John.
Really
turn the program into something that you don't even want to do.
No, John, it's always a pleasure for me to come down here and have you speak to me like this in such a nice, informed manner. But some of these morons, they got to get a clue.
Yeah, they certainly do. Georgiann Makropolous is next on line number 5.
Hi, John.
Hi, Georgie. How you doing?
All right, hon. How are you?
Okay.
I had a call. I listen to you every week. People for the past 6 months are begging for you to come back. And then you get assholes all the time calling you in these stupid calls. I just don't understand it. There's so many wrestling fans out there that want to be informed. And then you get people like this to ruin it. I wish they'd get a life. I mean, it's really ridiculous.
Yeah, it's kind of sad. But I guess there's that element out there that's going to try to destroy the program, and let them try. But it does get tiresome, and hopefully people will smarten up.
And I'd also like to know what the Power Twins are up to.
About 600 pounds. Thanks for asking.
Are they going to do any TV commercials or movies or anything? I know you're usually active in that.
Well, I did Die Hard 3 last week. I was like one of the larger extras, and expecting us on HBO sometime in October and on the Science Fiction Channel. Mm-hmm. And I'm on hold now for commercial. It will be shot in Europe sometime in the next 2 weeks. Mm-hmm. When we get back from Herbo Turbo's Blackjack Mania.
Oh, everybody's looking forward to that.
And who isn't?
All right, well, good luck, hon. And John, I wish you good luck, and I wish more people would call with intelligent wrestling questions, because you're the best there is, and you've got the answers for them, and this nonsense should really stop.
Well, it's only one thing to do, and that's up to the listeners, so what can I do? Just try to do my best. Thank you.
Keep plugging along. Okay, hon.
Thanks, Georgia.
And you got these assholes calling. I mean, that was the most surreal moment of the show with Georgie, who's always reserved, who I've never even heard her utter a profanity at all, ever.
Yeah.
And she comes on, and that's it,
When I heard that, my reaction was so big, I had to explain to my fiance, and I had to stop listening. I was like, you don't understand. Georgiann just called them all assholes while she's trying to defend him from their cursing.
What
her little cackle
show, yeah. Yeah, she was cackling a little bit too, and talking about Herbo Turbo.
Oh, so good. I like as soon as you hear her say it, you guys just sit back and start laughing.
Yeah,
like you don't try to catch it or whatever. You just laugh. You're just like,
at this point, it was like let them all go. Whatever they're gonna say, let them say.
Amazing. But yeah, you had quite a lot of people coming through. You did get Ken from Staten Island asking about why Matt Bourne leaving WWF, why he let them keep Doink. You had to explain how IP works. And you guys all agreed that the current Doink is the worst Doink. And then you guys talked about that again, that rumor that Rick Rude's going to come in with Tammy Fitch. So interesting. But yeah, I got one last clip for you. It's a really cool one. It's Bert from Franklin Square, and it's also your outro for the show.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So this was important to have my final words.
Your final words were notable.
Yeah.
And I thought that I thought this was great too, because this guy's a conversation I think is one of the conversations people were having when AEW came about having a more violent product and what that means to wrestling, Yeah.
Okay, that's how many we got? About 3 or 4 minutes to go. About 5 minutes to go here. Let's continue on and play Take That Call. Bert from Franklin Square, you're next.
Yeah, hi, John. How you doing?
I'm okay.
This is a subject you may or may not have covered. I'm not sure, but there's been a lot of talk lately, and even, I think, an editorial in WWF magazine about toning down what they called the extreme violence in the ring.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this might seem very obvious, but I wonder the people over there at Titan don't they realize what they're talking about is killing the goose that laid the golden egg?
Well,
you remove the violence from wrestling, and you may get more children interested, but the children are brought to the events by their parents.
It's quite
and their
true.
Parents are paying for pay-per-views, so I can't understand the logic behind that.
Well, wrestling, the very nature of pro wrestling over the years has been a violent confrontation between athletes in the ring. And the storylines and angles that have taken place for as long as I've watched it has always had a violent nature to it. The WWF, with their family entertainment concept, has tried to tone it down, and there's also talk in the government of controlling how much violence is viewed by television viewers. Although if you take a look at some of the series that are on TV, there's a lot of people getting killed and shot, and it's just something which I think that with the WWF's policy now of toning down a lot of violence, it's certainly going to attract more kids, but turn off more adults.
But John, don't you think that if they were to walk into any store that had any video games, they'd see things like Mortal Kombat 2 and other games, and this is really, of course it's release, and I think psychologists would say that there's plenty of good therapy involved in it. But I really think that they're moving in a direction that could, put the nails in the coffin on this thing.
Well, I feel the same way. I think that pro wrestling is something that when people go to the events, it releases tension. They usually see good triumph over evil. It's sociologists and psychologists have done studies on it.
Can I say something here, John? I'm no math expert, but all I want to say is, like, when people turn on professional wrestling, they're not the type of people who are going to go watch an opera or go watch ballet or an orchestra or something cultural. They want to see big athletes beating the crap out of each other, and this is what they want to see. They don't want to hear anything about toning this, toning that down. It's just that this is what people want. That's what they're going to see.
Sure, it's just another good escapist brand of entertainment.
Yes, it is.
And along the same lines, the callers that you've had that have been kind of off the wall, they should realize that what they're doing is they're confirming the suspicion a lot of people have that wrestling fans are a bunch of idiots.
Yes, they are. Yes, they are.
Oh, not at all. They're the most intelligent people in the world.
Well, I
just bit my
believe
tongue.
that they can, because you got to have a great sense of humor to be interested in this, and usually people with real good sense of humor are intelligent people.
What's your background?
I'm a photographer. I'm a professional. I'm 41 years old, and I have a good time reading comics sometimes and watching wrestling sometimes.
How long have you known about this program?
I used to hear your old show for a while.
So you've been a long-time listener of the program?
Pretty much, yeah.
Have you noticed that the callers have kind of really sunk to the lowest level that I've ever experienced doing this show for 5 years? And
yes.
It's very disturbing to me.
It is.
You don't have a lot of farm animals as pets, do you?
Without mentioning other shows that sound a lot less professional than yours, it sounds
well,
like
I think this particular show was plugged on a college radio program, and that's where these calls are coming from. And
I think that's exactly it.
So
thanks for your comments.
I got to thank my friend Ski for plugging it on the college radio show, and that's where we're getting these idiot calls from. We got to wrap it up for today, and I appreciate your call. All right, that's really about wrapped up. Dave, thanks a lot for your time today. And what can I say? Next week, will we be back here? I'll have to analyze that situation
and don't forget to
very,
watch
very closely.
The world famous Power Twins.
Because I'm not going to sit here and pay money every week to hear people curse.
Turbo Mania.
Well, thanks for your time, and hopefully we'll talk more wrestling with you next week if I decide to come back.
There you have it.
What's your problem?
I mean, the last caller was good. I was like, that's kind of the callers that you hope to get, and that's what we traditionally had gotten over the history of the show. But I guess you could understand my frustration towards the end there, that I just wanted to get out, and I was really pissed.
How many in general radio shows allowed call-ins? Was it a pretty constant thing, or was it?
Yeah, especially on GBB. I mean, GBB was brokered programming, so most of these were kind of talk shows, whether it was sports or self-help or whatever. No one got the amount of phone calls I did.
Yeah,
that's one thing at every station I'd ever been at. They were shocked that this show generated as much
engagement,
listenership, and engagement. Yeah, we never had dead air.
Yeah,
NYG was a different story. We had one line, so it was just like hit or miss. What are you going to get? And GBB and EVD, of course, had more professional setup where you could obviously field many calls. But this was one that I was seriously like, I don't want to do this no more. I was saying it to myself. And when I listened back to it, I was saying that's, as I said, in, when I posted this show for patrons, and I'm going to tell everybody out there listening to this, I knew that this was the beginning of the end, starting with this show.
Yeah. I mean, I know that we've had a lot of talk about like your attitude wasn't quite all there and your excitement wasn't always there, but this is where you're starting to see a lack of turnaround.
Yeah.
The engagement's dwindling from a positive aspect to a negative aspect. The show you came back to promote is probably not going to happen. Like,
it was not happen. It didn't happen.
Yeah.
I was kind of like, oh, geez. And you're still paying for your airtime. And did I even have one sponsor on this week's show? I think maybe LMS in the beginning, whatever it was, but there were no advertisers. So that means that each show was a money loser.
None of them were specific to you. All the calls or all the advertisers were the ones that were for the network. You could tell,
yeah.
One of them was cheese.
Cheese.
There was a commercial for cheese at one point. Actually, it may have been right before your show even led in. It was like between the shows. But there was one where it's like, this is a commercial for cheese. And then they talk about put cheese on apples, use pepper jack cheese or cheddar cheese. And at the end it goes, this has been paid for by the dairy farmers of America. I was like, amazing. Just eat cheese.
It was interesting look back at the beginning and the end. That's all I could say about this one. This was it. And I got on that plane. I think I probably left Thursday if the show was Friday. George Napolitano was there, and we got together. I remember with Tina Ferrari. She worked in WWE as Ivory, I believe.
Oh, yeah,
because she worked the Herbo Turbo show.
Yeah, and she was the only one who came out of Glow, I think.
Yeah, she came out of Glow, exactly. And if anyone wants to see this Blackjack Brawl, I know it's up there on YouTube, and there's that lumberjack match, and I never forget the Power Twins. They were running around the ring. There was something going on, and Herb is there at the commentary desk. And I don't know if it was David or Larry from the Twins just stopped and just started patting Herb on the head during the lumberjack match with Cactus and Snuka. But it's out there and if I could find the link, I'll put it up for patrons. I think it'll be pretty cool to share that YouTube link.
That's amazing. I can't wait for you to be back next week to talk about it.
With Cactus. Well, not next week, but it's actually, we'll be back next week, but the show that we'll be reviewing is actually from October the 2nd, 94, and it says Cactus Jack and Mark Madden. So,
oh, wow.
Yeah, show number 250.
Yeah. He's always an interesting guest.
Oh, yeah. So we'll see what we got coming up. We only got, I'm looking at them. We really have 10. After this one, we have 10 left.
Yeah. And it's no surprise talking about like we did to get to this point to be all like, what am I doing this for? Especially, you're promoting some shows, but not the same as you were, so
yeah,
it's a little different. So
and it wasn't like I needed the radio show if I wasn't promoting anything in New York and just to do the show. I think I was over just doing the show. I think I started out with an unbridled enthusiasm when we got back on GBB, and you could hear it on those first few episodes covering the ECW, NWA Screwjob. But it really was a newsy show, and it really just kind of fell off the cliff.
Yeah, but you also you were getting the calls that always, I think, lit you up about having the good conversations. Even the people who disagreed and didn't like it, they were at least having the conversation, Yeah. These are people not trying to have a conversation.
These are just people trying to incite and piss me off, and they accomplished it, You have to be professional on the air, but inside I was just ripping. I was ripping apart. I was like so pissed.
And you got to imagine, like, at what point, even as like younger people, do you like take a pride in running someone off of a radio show? You know what I mean? Like, this was a thing. Your show did so much for so many, and for them to be all like, "Look, we killed it." You're like, "Congratulations!" Like, what do you?
Hey, it's kind of like society today.
Yeah,
if you look at it, society's changed so much. Where this was just kind of for me. This was my own seismic shift from callers who really wanted to know about wrestling and enjoyed the interaction, the exchange, the conversation, the discussion, and then all of a sudden the switch flipped, and it was a bunch of immature people just trying to get their 5 seconds of fame before I hung up on them and insult me.
Yeah. it's just weird. It makes no sense. So, and it was a small operation. It's not like you guys had, layers and layers of people being vetted to call in, like.
No.
So, yeah.
And there was no 7-second delay.
Yeah, true.
I always thought there was, but these calls were going out over the air.
Yeah, they were getting in. They were getting it in. But yeah, I thought the show was a wild one. It felt important,
It was a pivotal one.
So, but that's it. That's all we got today.
Awesome. Well, it's over. When I heard it, when I uploaded it, I said, well, yeah, this is going to be an interesting one.
As I was going through, it just kept going like, God, another. Like, they were all back to back to back. Like,
yeah.
It was
the vast majority. What did we have? Maybe a little bit of a handful of really good callers, and the rest were just.
Yeah. And even then, your good callers weren't trying to have the conversations with you about the stuff. Like the guy who had asked about the USWA thing. What do you think about shutting up the fans? Those are the conversations you wanted to field. Not all these other ones were like, yo, where's Rick Rude?
And it was always fun to hear from Georgiann Makropolous. Yeah. And then she said asshole.
So good. They drove her to her limit.
I did.
Yeah.
The nicest woman in the world.
And kind of cool. She called like 3 weeks in a row.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like how you take her call because you know it's going to be safe.
Very safe.
And then you're like, okay.
Oh, jeez, man. Yeah. Well, I hope everybody enjoyed that one. Marsh, why don't you look forward to the future weeks that we're going to be doing here, and it'll be fun just to kind of, I'm glad I have some space between the shows too, because when I uploaded this one and I was like, here we go.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I think it's always good that you kind of wait and record it the week of, because sitting on some of this stuff, like when we've done a couple shows in a row, has been like more frustrating than just getting it and doing it, because it's like so fresh and it's so, you don't know what's next, and that's exciting, like I love it. So
yeah. It's not like we don't have great guests coming up too, though. We really do have a star-studded people on here, and Bruno comes back, Too Cold Scorpio, Paul E, Sabu's injury we cover, Cactus is in the studio, Tommy Fitch, Candido Scholar comes back, Bob Orton, we covered the death of Art Barr, Public Enemy joins us on a future show, Missy Hyatt, Tommy Dreamer, Mikey Whipwreck, wow, Eddie Guerrero, I see.
Wow.
So this is going to be interesting as we wind it up.
So even with that, the whole show thing falling apart the way that it didn't completely disenfranchise you from ECW, as you can tell by your guest list.
Yeah.
Which is nice.
Yeah. So, yeah. Well, I still believed in the product, regardless of, what was going on internally with this, me trying to promote this Weekend of Champions. But, hey, we'll just ride it out with everybody else. And we'll, and the beauty of it in a way is the fact that I don't know until I listen what happened all those years ago. And that's what makes the show really special, I feel.
Yeah, I agree. That's how I feel.
All right, my friend, give us your plugs and let us know what you're doing and what's going on in the life of Marsh.
I'm doing Pro Wrestling Spotlight on youtube.com/Pro Wrestling Spotlight. You can find me over at youtube.com/Queen of Carnage with Medusa. We're coming back with some more now. Took a little bit of a break. And Wrestling on the Rocks is making a bit of a comeback too. So you can check me out over at WrestlingTheRocks.com.
Yeah, that's the one where I have to still do that show with you.
Yeah,
it's a freewheeling, loose show. And you guys, partake in a little alcohol, I guess, when you're doing that show at times. Is that, am I correct in that assumption?
Yeah, we do sponsored, not sponsored, where the episode is sponsored by whatever I'm boozing, but they don't actually sponsor us.
Are you guys smoking dope too on it?
We've had guests where that's what they're doing for sure.
Yeah, Yeah, I listened to this Met podcast called Rico Bronya, which is from Evan Roberts from WFAN radio. And they actually experimented with a drunk Rico where he and his co-hosts were totally blitzed when they recorded an episode of it. So it sounds like that's what kind of you guys do occasionally on your show. And I'd love to partake in one of those sessions where I'll pop a couple of gummies and kind of enjoy your company and your...
We'll do it. We'll talk.
See what the life of Marsh is.
We'll talk after after a premium live event and just go over the differences between then and now and stuff like.
And I got an idea for a special guest for one of your Medusa podcasts.
Yep.
Tell her to bring on Daisy.
Daisy?
Her dog.
Her dog? Yeah. The dog made an appearance the last time.
She was telling me today how she, after the dog, she feeds her and then takes her out for a poop, and it's a little dog. She was talking about how the dog was crowning today, and then she runs back. In the bizarre world we all live in.
So
Marsh,
so good.
Always a pleasure. Great job as usual, and we look forward to the next episode to see the aftermath of the Herbo Turbo show. So that'll be fun.
Thank you.
All right, everybody. It was a crazy one today. If you'd like to hear this entire show unedited with all the calls and everything else, just go to patreon.com/John Arezzi and go check it out with all the other 200 plus shows that are up there. So become a patron, patreon.com/John Arezzi. As I always say, $5 a month gets you in the door, and there are other levels for your enjoyment. We have all of those social media accounts as well, the private group on Facebook for this show, Pro Wrestling Spotlight Podcast and Radio Show on Facebook, the public Matt Memories page, the private Matt Memories page, the private group, I should say. The YouTube channel, of course, is very important. Please subscribe to that if you haven't already. Go to youtube.com/Pro Wrestling Spotlight. If you're listening to the show on one of the Apple platforms, we really would appreciate a 5-star review if you enjoy what we're doing. That really helps us. The more reviews we get, the more 5-stars reviews. It just kind of helps us and shows your appreciation to what we're trying to do here. My book, Matt Memories, is still available for you if you'd like a signed and numbered copy. For $25, just go and send me an email, john@mattmemories.com, and we'd be more than happy to get one out to you, and I'll give you the details in that email. Or if you just want to buy one on Amazon, it's there. Just look for it. Audiobook is there as well, read by me. So that's available for all of the audiobook platforms. The book, Matt Memories, My Wild Life in Pro Wrestling, as you can hear from this show, country music, and with the Mets. And the sister podcast, Matt Memories from Madison Square Garden, is a new episode out covering the October 15th, 1973 show at the Garden. And we have a really special show being planned for December. It'll mark December 10th, 1973, the night that Bruno Sammartino recaptured the Worldwide Wrestling Federation title from Stan Stasiak. So we're going to have some special guests on that one, and that one will be released on December the 10th, 2023. 50 years to the day that Bruno recaptured that title. Matt Memories from Madison Square Garden, available on all your podcast platforms. It is co-hosted by Tim Poutre, written and researched by my dear friend Richie Garcia. I want to thank our producer and creative director, Marsh. And also thanks to the Patreon executive producers, Anthony Pyrus and Joe Holloway. And for each and every one of the patrons, whether you're a $5 patron, a $10 patron, a $25 patron, $50 or $100, for all of those 75 people that are out there, and I wish there was more of you to experience this history. But I want to thank each and every one of you for helping with the production costs for this program. Until next week, when we relive more history with you, this is John Arezzi for Pro Wrestling Spotlight.